Hey guys, this is Allison from Allykatkreations. How are you? I can't even tell you how I feel because it's not good. So I'll just leave it at that. Please like, share, and subscribe to my channel if you haven't done so already. And if you get anything from my work and you would like to support me and this crazy journey of trying to sell my house, helping me pay and keep my lights on, me fed. I'm still extremely underweight. I got muscles though. If you get a connect the dot, a new author to read, and you just like to pay it forward and use the Amish mindset, please help me out in whatever abundance that you have. It is extremely dire circumstances I'm living in. So without further ado, I'm going to do the Key of Destiny number 18. So excited for this. Before I begin, most of the work in my house in terms of packing and stuff is semi almost done. I have a showing later today, and I have an open house on Sunday, and I have some people coming tomorrow. So I am trying to do my videos around all of this craziness. So I'm back at it for the moment, and I'm hoping that I sell soon. Sunday will be 17 years that my father has passed away. And I'm hoping that he can give me a miracle. Because what's coming in right now, sorry guys, I got cat hair in my eye. I have a fan on. He died 17 years ago and I need a miracle. And what's coming in is not bad, but I can't wait 60 days for people to get a mortgage and to get money in my account. I cannot pay for my bills now. How am I going to last until October, November? I can't do that. And then the jobs that I am looking at that are in my field, I need to jump on. So, and it's not like I can go purchase a house because I have no money. I can't get my own mortgage because I have no income. And my only income is selling this house. So I'm in this fuck you bitch limbo. I'm just making sure before I read things are out of my eye. Yeah. Okay. Number 18, the second initiation. Quote, now bend thy hand and listen well, O Bodhisattva. Compassion speaks and saith, can there be bliss when all that lives must suffer? Shalt thou be saved and hear the whole world cry? Thou art enlightened, choose thy way. The voice of the silence, Blavatsky. And I just did The Secret Doctrine last night. Stanza 5. Let us first understand and consider the number 18 according to its separate digits. Here we have 1, the straight and narrow way, and the rod of power, or the magic wand, standing at the right hand of the spiral path of physical evolution. Number 8. The most obvious meaning of this number is therefore that of contrast. God's way is direct, unswerving, straight, true. Man's way is evoluted, curved, doubting, and doubling on itself. But here in 18, we find this curved line of physical evolution has accomplished its cycle, passed its first initiation, and has taken the one life to be the determining factor in all its future unfoldment. If we take number 18 in its totality of 1 plus 8, it gives us 9. And since the angel of revelation measured with his golden reed, 144 cubits, according to the measure of man, that is, of the angel. This again confirms the idea that the number of 18, being the second initiation, since 144 equals 1 plus 4 plus 4 equals 9, or initiation, in which the initiate must measure the walls of his inner life. The word angel means a messenger, here evidently meaning God's messenger to lesser evolved humanity, and to the lower kingdoms a superman or an initiate, for man has not obtained the measure of man until he has become an initiate. In fact, at this step, the discipline and disciple has made the one life a golden reed with which he measures all things pertaining to his new life. And like the angel spoken of through the power of this golden reed, he sees to it that a city, his life, with all its inhabitants, is 4 square, both outer and inner. 4 plus 4 equals 8. The gates, centers, thereof the walls thereof. The fact that the length and breadth and height of the city are equal, being 12,000, 4 plus 4 plus 4 equals 12. 4 longs, each is another reference to the completed experience of the 12 zodiacal signs and their 12 forces. The 3 times 12 equals 36 equal 9 is a completed initiation of matter, the triune God manifested in a 3-dimensional universe. It should also be noted that 12,000 furlongs equals 7. Sorry, guys. It's a big number. I'm trying to see if it's a million or if it's a trillion. It's so written weird here. Okay. 7,920,000 feet. See, there's my dyslexia, because I'm seeing too many zeros and things. Which by occult addition, 18 equals 9. And then when repeated for each of the 3 dimensions, gives 23,760,000 feet, which again gives us 18 or 9. The disciple has now grasped the rod of power in his right hand and made it of it a staff on which it to learn and lean. As he passes through the valley of the shadow of death, the point in number 8 where the curves cross each other, he can now say, yeah, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, and thou art with me. Thy rod and the staff, they comfort me. Learning upon this staff, he passes over the dread valley of death and carries on his evolution uninterrupted by physical death. Yet from this point on, we must use his rod to measure, test, and square his outer life, the walls of his city, with his inner experiences. When he begins thus both to lean upon the one life and use it as a measure for his own life, he cannot but find it is also a magic wand. As he ceases to trust in his own power, he finds the seductions of the senses more and more subject to the divine inner sense. And with the magic wand of trust and righteousness, a decision is no longer so difficult to obtain and manifest. Again, number 8 is the circle, which we have already found to be the container of all potencies, and out of which the light shall bring perfection. But now twisted or turned upon itself, the serpent no longer swallows its tail, thus completing its cycle, but widths and twists in space out of the contortions of its withering. It brings forth a perverted image of itself, so that the light of the Christos, or the dot in the center, is partially obliterated by the cross lines, the cross of crucifixion. Hence we call the serpent force evil, the devil, and the temper. But in 18, we have seen the vision of the straight and narrow path. The dot has unfolded into the one and become the axis around which our lives turn. At this step, the initiate has faced with one divine truth, and felt the mighty urge of the one life. Henceforth, he strives to make the twisted line 8 subservient to the straight line 1 that is at his right hand. Therefore, he struggles to no more, but fearlessly lifts up the withering serpent, and like Aaron, makes up the rod of power, knowing that it must ultimately bring both equilibrium and balance to himself and to mankind. Officius Levi associates 18 with all that is magical, especially the glamour produced by the love filters. In this, he is correct, but we differ somewhat in the application. The ideas expressed in this number are firstly, the evolution 8 inevitably leads to initiation 18 equal 9. Secondly, the eternal immutable fixity of the one law of the good, destined forever to bring man back, even though to straighten the twisted line of evolution, he must banish his last enemy, death. Or as it is expressed in Bunyan's Pilgrim's Progress, fill up the slough of despond, which lies in the midst of the valley of the shadow of death. Therefore, the connection of the number with magic, glamour, and life and love filters must be carefully considered. In number 18, the initiate has lifted up the rod of power, but has not yet been tested as to the use he makes of it. He has proved that by it he can perform so-called magic, for he has done so in his own body. The magic wand in his hands can be used to strike the rock that the waters of life may gush forth to refresh thirsty humanity fainting in the desert of life, or may be used as sorcery or black magic to enslave his less evolved brethren. This last, however, can only occur when he becomes the victim of the glamour of his own obtainments. As to love filters, while they have little intrinsic power, there is more truth in the possibility of their effectiveness than it is supposed. The major effect produced by such concoctions is the result of the deliberate will put into the words spoken over them by the one preparing them, and the magnetic force coming from one who has learned how to make use of this willpower, rather than the ingredients themselves, although these may actually simulate the sex functions. Today, the magician generally prefers to work directly on the aura of the victim rather than through the hocus pocus. It's weirdly spelled. So effective in the dark ages of ignorance and superstition. According to Officius Levi, number 18 is strongly affinitized to the subject of sex, and the many vile teachings rife today bear a close relationship to the medieval dabbling in love filters, glamours, and black magic, for the seduction of the senses preeminently includes the perversion of sex and the waste of the life forces. Once having strayed from the straight and narrow way, the initiate has lost his own power, hence must depend upon the whims of the incubi and of the lower astral, who must be constantly proportionate through the pouring out of the physical life force, either as blood or as sex force. Hence, the temptations at this step are fearful. Our protections lie in a realization that our power comes not from the astral entities who require obedience and appropriation, but from the divine Christ. Hence, at 18, the evolving soul must lay tight hold on his rod of power, recognizing that it is the one life of Christ's force, the ruler or sustainer of all manifestations. Yet there is, and still, black magicians. Those who have reached 18 and have then chosen to pervert their powers. There are also those whom we will call brothers of the shadow, neither deliberately black nor wholly white, who led mankind astray, either for their own aggrandizement or through an inordinate belief in their own judgment, believing since they know more than others that they have the right to compel others to follow and obey them. Their life may be centered in the one divine life, and they may think that use of the rod of power only to help and uplift, but they insist upon absolute allegiance to them or to their way of thinking, having frantically argued themselves into the belief that their way is the best way for all. But just as the black magician can only harm one who is affinitized in some way to him and who deliberately opens his heart to the glamour thrown over him, so the brothers of the shadow can only lead astray such souls as desire adulation, pomp, and show of power rather than divine truth, who are easily flattered and led on by specious promises, also always about to be fulfilled. Also, those who are seeking a justification for unlawful indulgence in some form of satisfaction or desire, hence welcome anyone who, under the guise of spiritual teachings, will give them an excuse for breaking the law of God and man. To make 18 a true symbol of black magic, however, the one would have to be dominated by the 8 or the crooked path, cast in shadow over the straight and narrow path, so as to make it difficult to see. The world today is working out its misuse of the power given to money, there being quite a similarity between 18 and the dollar mark. Money should be used as a blessing for all mankind instead of being a curse, for neither money nor the possession of other forms of wealth is evil in itself. It is evil only in the use made of it and the power given to it by considering the money value of any object or idea the highest standard by which it is measured. In the coming new age, money value as a standard must give way to the standard of service and usefulness to the general good. Because of the resemblance of the dollar sign to number 18, it suggests the idea that we can never outgrow the curse of money until we learn to make of it an 18, until we use it as a rod of power with which to help on all evolution. We might be heading in that direction right now. Just saying. Many altruistic, spiritual, advanced persons are suffering today from a lack of money with which to help humanity because of their misuse of it in the past incarnations. In those days, though, mistaken teachings as to the uses and obligations of wealth, those who aspire to spiritually develop turned their backs upon the wealth which the great law had placed in their hands to administer for the best good of the community and take vows of poverty, either turned their wealth over to the church or left it in the hands of those who are neither unselfish nor spiritually advanced enough to be guided through inspiration as to its proper and most helpful administration. Today, such persons find themselves possessed of all the spiritual development which resulted from their unselfishness, prayers, devotion, and spiritual aspiration, but without the physical means necessary to put their unselfish ideas into practice. And they will continue to suffer from the lack of funds until they learn that they must not turn their backs upon anything which the great law brings to them, but must administer it as stewards, that it may accomplish its greatest good for all. When one has reached 18, having opened the door of power, he must face the awful accumulation which the misuse of this power has created through the ages. The very fact of his reaching this point means that he must now set to work to redeem the results of this wrong use of power. Hence, unless he be very pure, strongly centered in the white light of truth, if he opens the door but a crack, all the pent-up forces, the product of ages and such misuse of power, will sweep in like a pack of devils and drive him on to its own undoing, usually into black magic. Also, in the majority of cases, there is a personal karma to be adjusted. Very few pass the step the first time they essay it. Generally, it is only after many failures and bitter experiences that one can pass on in safety. Therefore, instead of condemning those who have failed, we should send them the strength of love and sympathy. I agree with that. Chapter 18 continued. Quote, the initiation comprises two different but united sections: the theory of the resources and the necessities of his enterprise, which the neophyte always receives as an inheritance, which leaves him absolute liberty of thought and practice in which he exercises under the direction of his masters and the physical, intellectual, and moral self-control, which will render him an initiate. The Tarot of the Bohemians, Pepus. As we explained in number 8, the original presentation of 8 was in a horizontal position, the infinity sign, in which one circle represents man, the other woman, and then joined, they symbolize a balanced life. To manifest life in its fullest, the two circles must add the straight line or must individually take up the rod of power. While number 8 carries the idea of the two perfect circles touching and working out their evolution together, only the one standing at the right hand of the 8 can bring them to this second initiation. In 8, man and woman are joined by the senses, in 18 by the one life. Number 8 in the horizontal position is called the symbol of life, that which has brought forth all life or evolution. But while the 8 unopened is a symbol of physical life, each circle must eventually be unfolded into 9. Men and women must receive their first initiation individually, but later must stand upright side by side as symbolized by the two pillars of Jachin and Boaz, and receive their second initiation together, as 9 plus 9 equals 18. For every multiple of 9 brings about an initiation. This must be accomplished either can pass on to the completion of the cycle and say, I and my father are one. Thus, standing side by side, they have completed the balance, because each has individually equilibrated the forces within, and together they can go on to the third initiation. In Sifra Yitzraya, number 18 is referred to the equilibrium, and it is called the kingdom of the restored world, or the bride of the microposphius. It is also frequently refers to man and women as the book of concealed mystery. The deepest mystery given to this planet to solve is concealed to be the mystery of the equilibrium of sex, that a balanced humanity must result and thus restore the world to its Edenic purity. Equilibrium is the harmony which results from the analogy of contraries. It is the living synthesis of counterbalanced power. Thus, form may be described as the equilibrium of light and shade. Take away either factor, form, it's viewless. For the aspirant, there is a difference between equilibrium and balance. Equilibrium is the equalizing of all the forces in himself, while balance is a perfect adjustment of the positive and negative forces of two perfectly equalized factors at each end of a scale. Number 18 is the second initiation because 8, the number of Saturn, stands beside and is subservient to the 1, the number of the position positive sun. The tests of Saturn, the initiator, then are here illumined by the sun and overcome by the magic wand of the one life now held in the initiate's right hand. One having passed the second initiation, he can go on no more back, although his temptations are great and he may fail and pervert his powers. For eventually the son of his double initiation, 9 plus 9 equals 18 equals 9, will inevitably bring him to the third 9. If we have thus blended the sun and Saturn, we have found Saturn no longer in his malign aspect of the tester, but as he appears to be one who has passed the second initiation, namely as the star of the morning. Saturn, the grim skeleton whose path passes over the dread valley, he who tears from us every earthly thing he have clung to, has now been fearlessly faced as the initiate looks upon him. He sees the radiance of the sun illuminating him. Henceforth, glamour has no more power to deceive. Even the glamour of the astral world no longer affrights or seduces him, for he has dared to enter in carrying the rod of power with him and has proved to himself his supremacy over it. Heretofore, he may have explored its many regions, but always under the care and guidance of his master, who had shielded him from all harm. But now he must face the insidious glamour of flattery, temptation, and promise over alone and conquer by the aid of his rod. Here he will be tempted to utmost, and only as he lifts high his rod can he come off victor. Thus he is able to pass through the valley of the shadow of death and fear no evil. For just as a valley is a depression between two mountains, so here the initiate, having left behind the height and spiritual exhilaration resulting from his balancing of earth conditions, must pass through the valley ere he is ready to climb the greater height of spiritual obtainment beyond. There are many earnest travelers on the path who, because they thought they had reached the first stage of completion in 10 by the road of celibacy, now find that something was lacking. They now realize that 18 can only express in its fullness when the two circles of the 8 stand together as the book of concealed mystery, now to be opened, read, and inwardly digested. They find it impossible to pass through the valley to its further end alone, hence must reincarnate in number 11 to learn the vital lessons of cooperation with their complementary mate. And no matter how objectionable the lesson is to them, they will reincarnate again and again until they have laboriously retraveled the path of evolution and learned their lesson. As we saw in our early study of number 9, this is but the straightening out of the curved line in 8, and it is the angle of the great law, who, with the golden need, is forever measuring, straightening, and calling with love notes, too persistent to resist. Come back, who gives to the man that power to accomplish which carries him through suffering, hardship, and deaths innumerable, yet gives him no rest until he listens to the voice and obeys. And it is and through this action and reaction of 1 and 8 that man can ultimately complete the second cycle of 10 and manifest all that 18 stands for. Many who treat of numbers look upon 18 as a holy evil. Others label it the path of the senses. But from the foregoing, it should be fully understood that it is the path of the purified senses under control of the one life. Among the 32 paths of wisdom, the 18th path is called the house of influence, by the greatest of whose abundance the influx of good things upon created beings is increased. And from the midst of this investigation, the arcana and hidden senses are drawn forth, which dwell in the shade and which cling to it, from the cause of all causes. Kabbalistically, number 18 is called the Stella of Light and is sacred to Mercury. The symbol of the 18th degree of the Rosicrux is the aquatic bird, sometimes a swan and sometimes a pelican, but always floating on the water, as a spirit or dove moves upon waters of space, or the great deep in the creation story. This swan or pelican issues periodically from the waters to give birth to 7 young ones, the sevenfold Elohim. Later, however, this symbol was represented by the pelican tearing open her bosom to feed her 7 young, which carries out the same idea, expresses all that 18 signifies. We must also consider 18 from the standpoint of 666. 6 plus 6 plus 6 equals 18 equals 9, the number of the beast representing the struggle of the Christos, or the great creative force we call the Christ force. Number 6, through the opposition of the 3 worlds. In this sense, the interpretation is quite different from that of 18, for 18 represents the individual overcoming his opposition to the divine and passing his second initiation, and becoming the Superman, while the summing of 666 represents all that Christ must overcome in the 3 worlds. This opposition, the beast, is the controlling power of this world at present stage of evolution. It stands black and terrible, with his mark in every hand or in the forehead, confronting the neophyte at every step. The mark in the hands indicates the power of the beast to prevent us from accomplishing except according to its methods, that no man might buy or sell save he that had the mark or the name of the beast or the number of his name. The power we exemplify in this business world today. The mark in the forehead indicates those who cannot think, save in the terms of the beast, whose very faces proclaim the shrewd businessman. While the beast has been personalized by many writers and assigned to various persons and institutions while seemed opposed to true Christianity, and while many such persons and institutions may have been channels for the expressions of the beast, they could not have been the beast itself, for the beast includes all the forces which oppose the perfect manifestation of the Christ. For the mere inertia of matter and accumulative evil of mankind and evil astral entities to the conscious opposition of black magicians and the utterly selfish materialists who look upon the principles of the spiritual life as something opposed to the free indulgence of their desires, hence work against the spiritual expressions. And since man reaches his final 9 or great initiation only when he has conquered all opposition to the Christ within himself, so humanity and the globe itself will reach their great initiation only when the Christ force vanquishes the force of the beast or manifests without opposition through man and the planet. In the early days, though, the inertia and selfishness of man, the beast was allowed to establish his domain over the earth. And therefore, through the conscious efforts of enlightened and unselfish man, must the beast be vanquished and the reign of the Christ be established. 18 considered as 6 plus 6 plus 6 shows plainly that it refers to the second initiation, not of the individual, but of humanity. Well, ladies and gentlemen, that's what we are going through right the effing now. Yay. For reals. Here we find not only the struggle, but the assurance of final victory of the Christ force over the material conditions and lower creation of the physical, astral, and mental worlds. It is also the number of Baphomet, the goat of Mendes, the image of that mystical and symbolical beast, which symbolizes the synthesized power of magic, both black and white, which confronts the disciple when he reaches his second initiation. Only when we have reached mastery in the 3 worlds are we confronted consciously with the beast, for only then can there be any real temptation to worship him. When we hold our hands, the power of the magician is a very real temptation as to how we will use that power. If we use it to work for or to worship self in any of the 3 worlds, we fall down and worship the beast in its aspect of black magic. But if, like Jesus, we cry, "Get thee behind me, Satan," we see that once we turn away from the black side and refuse to use our hard-won powers to self, the beast becomes a symbol of the conquering Christ or white magic. This aspect of the beast is encountered only by one who has struggled with the temptations of 3 worlds and mastered their forces. Only when not only one Christ man here and there has conquered, but a majority of mankind or the race at large has said, "Get thee behind me, Satan," will the great question be answered to which shall rule 3 worlds, Baphomet or the Christ. In another aspect, the beast is to the world what the animal soul is to the individual. Not evil in itself, but the force of inertia which the Christ must overcome and make to vibrate in harmonious response. It is all that resists the forces of the Christ life. In nature, it is that force which will turn the most highly cultivated land back to the wilderness if left to itself, that will make the most highly gifted and intellectual man a barbarian if too long separated from the restraining and also stimulating forces of civilization, that will make a body ferment, purify, and ultimately disintegrate once the divine spark of life has left it. It is the natural brutishness of man, which expresses as Bolshevism and anarchy once he refuses to obey the voice of the divine guidance or lets go the guiding thread of life, conscious, which would lead him out of the labyrinth of inharmonious physical conditions through the path and of law and order. Although this force is not evil in itself, being but a lack of response to the higher, it becomes evil when man, who should work with the one life in its mission of redemption, uses his power to mold this inert and negative phase of life to pander to his lower passions and desires or given expression to the beast in himself. Hence, those who receive the number of the beast in their hands are those who are either actively or finally working with the forces of nature, which tend to interfere with the harmonious manifestations of life on the planet. Only the manifestations of Christ's principle can hold this earth in the hollow of his hand and mold from it a perfect theater for perfected man's further evolution. The beast is also the primitive force of matter, restless and ill at ease, and tending ever towards disruption, each separate atom seeking to manifest its own form of life at the expense of the rest, as seen in Cancer. It is chaos before it is informed by the light of the one life and started on its evolution towards cosmos. This force is always striving with the creative force, the Christ, struggling to go back to the nothingness from which it emerged. Hence, we call 6 the Christ force struggling in matter, and 666 the inertia and opposition which the Christ must overcome in the 3 worlds. In Revelation, we read, quote, "Here is wisdom. Let him that hath understanding count the number of the beast, for it is the number of a man." End quote. This verse refers to the animal man while he is yet in the stage of unfoldment, symbolized by 666, or when the Christ in himself, still struggling with ignorance, indifference, and sway of the animal instinct by which he is ruled in that stage, while 144 is the number of man, the Superman, who has mastered and become the angel. Whoa. The 18th letter, Tazadi. I don't know if I'm saying that right, and I do apologize. Quote, "The 18th path is called the house of influence, by the greatness of whose abundance the influx of good things upon created beings is increased. And from the midst of the investigation, the arcana and hidden sense are drawn forth, which dwell in its shade, which cling to it from the house of all causes." Sefer Yitzraya. Quote, "He produced Tazadi, predominant in taste, crowned it, combined it, and formed it with it, Aquarius, in the year and the gullest of man." Sefer Yitzraya. The 18th letter is Tazadi. It is simple letter and corresponds to the sign Aquarius. Its meaning is a fish hook, but the fish hook here spoken of has a mystical meaning. It is the hook by which the initiate must pull Leviathan out of the sea, or the power bestowed by Jesus on his disciples, who were fishermen, to enable them to become fishers of men. The idea is simple to that given in the 9th letter, namely that of the definite step in evolution or place of protection, also a naga, a serpent or wise man. In occult numeration, it is always the ultimate digit which completes the meaning of the letter, and in the 18, that digit is 9. We also find that in Kabbalah gives the numerical value of 18 as 90, but it must be remembered that Kabbalistically, ciphers do not change the numerical significance of a letter, but simply mark its expansion into a higher octave, or lift its value into a new step of development. They also refer to the periods of time, tens always referring to periods of evolution, while hundreds refer to prophecies, or to the future events. Therefore, 18 considered as 90 would represent the accomplishment of all that 9 contained, but that the cycle of 10 added, while 1800 would point to a future evolution in which these same powers would be greatly multiplied. The particular meaning generally given to Azadi is that of an aim or an end. For instance, placed at the beginning of a word, it signifies the movement which will lead to a desired end. But if placed at the end of a word, it marks the end itself or indicates the aim has been accomplished. It is referred to the gullet of man in that it's performed spiritually for man what the gullet does materially, carries the food to the stomach to be digested after it's masticated. The 18th tarot card, the moon. You got the scorpion, you got 2 dogs, 2 towers. The 18th card of the tarot is called the moon. Here we find the picture of a meadow faintly lighted by the moon, symbolized by intuition. The light of the sun no longer shines directly, but is reflected in the moon. The meadow is bounded by a tower on either side, while a path winding uphill loses itself in the distance. A dog and a wolf are howling at the moon, and crawfish is trying to crawl out of the water. Drops of blood are raining down from the moon upon the dreary path. This card indicates the turning point. The initiate has here let go the guiding hand of his guru, who would symbolize the direct sunlight and henceforth must walk the path lightened only by the moon, his own intuition. The towers between which he must go are mightily strongholds. On one hand, the tower of ambition and black magic, whose snares and glamours are spread for his feet. On the other hand, the tower of discouragement and faith-heartedness, whose battlements are armed by the giant despair, and amidst whose swift-flying arrows he must wend his way. The drops of blood symbolize the spiritual blood, or the voice of the silence calls it the blood of the heart, which must bathe the feet, understanding of every aspirant who walks this path. He must learn to listen to the voice of intuition, moon, and even through him seemingly walks alone, must know the voice of God speaking to him from within. The rod of power is in his right hand, for the man's recognition of his spirit has begun its conscious evolution through matter. The light of the great there was an empty page. Central sun has reflected itself upon the moon, so that this orb of night can still give light to his feet, and he knows he walks in the divine light because he finds it reflected within himself. The dog symbolizes a friend who, being servile, cringes and flatters and bays at the light of the truth, yet is ready to attack at a moment's notice. The wolf is his own animal nature, subdued by not domesticated. The point on the path of attainment, symbolized by this card, is where the initiate must descend into hell, whose threshold is guarded by the 3-headed dog Cerberus. I'm going through this right now, by the way, FYI. I'm walking in this path. One aspect of this hell represents the confusion, opposition, and antagonism into which the initiate must descend as he begins to withdraw from his former activities in the world. From this point of view, the first head of the dog represents the tendency of the world to bark at, ridicule, and bite everyone who takes this important step. That's profound. The second head represents servile devotion to home, housekeeping, family duties, business affairs, or any other thing of a purely worldly nature when it is permitted to check the soul's ongoing. The third head represents all hard, preconceived, and limited understandings of truth, which insist upon truth being interpreted according to the certain set rules and laws, which at this point confronts and tempts the initiate to consider that the particular experiences he has passed through must be experienced by all, since they have been his means of advance. He is tempted to assert that his way is the only way. As he steps across the portal of our higher life, we find many sayings. Are not these traits admirable, and are not the tasks of the outer life necessary? They are indeed, yet like Hercules, we must bring Cerberus out of the lower life, and without using weapons, without killing out any of these animal traits, must make him follow at heel and submit to the new master or true self, instead of Pluto, the god of the lower regions. The crab is the symbol of the Great Mother, Cancer, the breasts. And in this card, we find it just emerging from the water, sea of humanity, also the great deep of ignorance. As the 18th card corresponds with the zodiacal sign Aquarius, and as the Aquarian age, into which humanity has recently entered. In the woman's age, that which is symbolized by the crab, woman, motherhood, must emerge from the sea of ignorance and illusion and take its true place in the world. We also find that the true Aquarian should be one who has reached 18 or who has perfected his initiation on the physical plane, who has imbibed sufficient nourishment from the beasts of the Great Mother to sustain him on his only way, who is now ready to step out from the sea of humanity as more than man, and with his staff in hand, tread the path of 18, the second initiation. At this point, only too often the Great Mother love seems to be immersed in the waters or only just crawling out of them. Now he sees trending the path alone through showers of blood, but later he will see the Mother as the Holy Ghost, the Comforter, that he will lift the jar of water and pour it forth for humanity and for the world and go on his way rejoicing. The Aquarian has only now awakened to the fact that the path of senses is the path of bloody sacrifice, that the moon drips blood, that the wolf and dog dispute his ongoing. But the true Aquarian is the captain of the host. He is the strength of Hercules to bring Cerberus out of the lower regions and make him a faithful friend to guard his ongoing, while the wolf he will drive back into his own place of manifestation and hold it in leash. Another meaning given by Pappus is the card is chaos, but it is chaos as it brings to fall away at the world of command given by the awakened soul through the force of creative light. While it is the end or final point, sorry guys, I'm getting spam and I have to keep my phone on. Command by an awakened soul through the force of the creative light. While it is the end or final point of the divine materialization, as Pappus put it, yet we would rather hold to the idea that it is the beginning of redemption. In fact, it is the turning point in evolution. The path of the senses winds back and forth around the state and around the straight and narrow way of divine realization. And at 18, the initiate, like Hercules, finds his strength and sees the rod of power and started out in earnest to perform the 12 tasks which constitute his initiation, or to correlate with and master the 12 signs of the zodiac with their forces. Then indeed he becomes a captain to lead rather than the slave to follow. Wow. I feel like everything that was just described there, I'm walking through right now in my life. I'm alone. I don't really have help. I am in the thick of a nightmare. I'm living in hell right now, and I'm walking through that valley, fighting off demons and the devils. I do apologize for the phone interruptions. I have to keep my phone on for my realtor. I have a showing in a half an hour. So, yay, I finished. I hope you enjoyed this. I really love this book, and I'm glad that this is in divine timing because what we're going through as a humanity is happening right now. And this really should help people understand what is happening in the world and what we must do to crack open and get this initiation started so that we can find the Christos within us, conquer it, master it, and move on to 19. Sending each and every one of you love and light, and I hope to see you on the next one, guys. Bye.